got the body of Thomas but not the soul. Those who write the manuals of moral theology have got the body, not the soul. Those who write the canon law know about plumbing. They don't know about personalism. So when the Pope wrote his encyclical, he wrote it from a personalist point of view. And he didn't talk about plumbing, he talked about love. And we talked about love in that encyclical. He says, it seems to me that it's difficult to say that love is in kind of the minimum fullness that it has to be if you are by your wit excluding the possibility of a family. That's really good. And because he's talking about love in terms of sexual intimacy, he was able to talk about marital rape. He says, it's just not humanly loving and excluded. And very, very carefully he talked about, unlike John the 23rd, who thought that the world could continue to feed as many people as populated it, Paul VI said, we're in trouble as this world continues to grow. And we have to figure out what to do as this world continues to grow. And he talks about this in Humanae Vitae. But he says, even as we do this, we have to consider some way of doing it that it isn't going to fly in the face of the minimum flowering of love. And that's, if you read the encyclical with care, it's a lovely, lovely document. And it's a very important document because it's the first time, I think, within the history of papal writings that marital rape is at least addressed. Yeah. So we can fake consent, and then we can also establish a condition to consent. I will marry you tomorrow if the sun shines. I'll marry you today if the sun shines tomorrow. Does that invalidate my marriage? Yes, because it's a condition regarding the future. And any condition regarding the future invalidates the marriage.
So the example of the med school, they marry.
I will marry you if you won't have any children with me.
Well, or I'll marry you if you become successful.
Or I will marry you if we become a millionaire.
Right, exactly.
I marry you if you're a millionaire.
Right, exactly.
I will marry you if you have a Hope Diamond.
Right.
And like for people who would like to have so many children, and they're trying to have children, but then they find out that they can't have any children at all.
I will marry you only if you're fertile.
Only if you're fertile, right. Yeah.
Invalidates the marriage.
If they can prove that. If they can prove that that was a
how do you
condition.
prove that? Yeah, well, you write all these things, put them aside in a safe deposit box and pull out the appropriate one. If the marriage will, no, stop that. It's been done. It's been done.
I'll marry you if you give me a ring.
I'll marry you if you give me
Ring.
if you give me a big house and Santa baby. Yeah.
I want to be sure that I'm going to be able to define the difference between nullity and validity.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to get there. Yeah, okay.
All marriages that are null are also invalid. Not because validity is a term of law, a term of art, that means has effect in the church. So the church is going to call it a marriage. All marriages that are null are also invalid. Not all invalid marriages, however, are also null. Because null means, in terms of the ultimate human reality, something's wrong. Just as but suppose we have this case. I marry you, and I consent to everything that's necessary to marry you, but you're a Jew. And if you're a Jew, there's disparity of worship. That's what it's called, a Christian marrying a non-Christian. And unless that condition is set aside by a dispensation from the bishop, then that marriage is invalid. Even though I love you and you love me more than anybody in the history of Western civilization has loved each other. Invalid because there's this kind of thing about I'm not a qualified person to marry in the Catholic Church. That's what an impediment is. It makes me unqualified to get married in the Catholic Church. There's a whole array of them. The one that's chief that we see all the time is marrying a non-Christian. If I marry a non-Catholic Christian, it's not an impediment. And it doesn't require dispensation. It simply requires the bishop's or the ordinary's permission. The ordinary can be the vicar general or the episcopal vicar.
What about marriage to an ex-Catholic?
I didn't think there was such a word.
Ex-Catholic?
That's somebody who's
Well, okay, there used to be a thing called abandon the church by a formal act.
yes.
Yeah. So somebody's abandoned the church, but yeah, that's not a problem. Usually going to ask that person, though, to do the same thing that the Protestant would do, which is that thing called the cautiones, which is be informed of the fact that you are taking upon yourself the responsibility of raising any children born of that marriage as Catholic.
I remember a big discussion about somebody who wanted to get married, who was a soldier, who, I forget the terminology, but could not have children. And so there was this big thing back and forth whether there could really be a marriage, even
Yeah,
though they loved
the impediment of impotence.
impotence.
Okay, impotence, which is permanent, can't be cured, it can only be cured by a serious operation, and is perpetual, going to last forever, and is antecedent, is present before the marriage. Okay? Impotence is defined because it's written by male ecclesiastics, always in terms of the male. It's erection, penetration, semination. And semination doesn't mean seminal fluid, it means some sort of fluid. Cowper's gland fluid, something. So what happens, there was a great case of a prince in Spain who had lost his testicles, and the Holy See allowed him to marry because some sort of ejaculate, although it wasn't seminal fluid, was possible. They allowed that to happen. So it's erection, penetration, insemination. But what happens if I get my testicles and my penis shot off or blown off in
the war or
in
something
the
like
war?
that.
Yeah. So probably they're not going to want that marriage to be, because that's perpetual antecedent impotence.
However, if the couple chooses to marry, they can.
Well, the bishop probably wouldn't. If somehow the pastor said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I don't have any of the plumbing. I lost it all in the war." I think we better call the bishop on that and see what Cardinal Wuerl has to say.
But then it would be a sacramental marriage.
It wouldn't be any marriage.
That's what I mean, it would be. What about the case where a person one is baptized and one is not, even if it's not, I mean, I know it's
Disparity
Jewish,
of
that's the spirit of worship, but.
What about somebody like Christopher Willis, already married?
Fine. Oh, that's fine. Oh, that's
Okay.
fine. All right. So, no, it has to be the time you say I do.
Okay.
But with that though, that's not a sacramental marriage then if one is baptized and one is not?
That's right. It's not a sacramental marriage, which
Okay.
means it's liable to Catholic divorce.
It's liable for annulment then?
Divorce.
Even if you got dispensation.
Okay.
Yes, divorce.
Even if what?
Even if you got a dispensation of mixed religion. If it's a non-sacramental marriage that blows up, you do a thing called the Pauline privilege or the privilege of the faith. Pauline privilege is both are not baptized. And one is going to get baptized and come to the church and love Jesus and all that. The other is, one's a Catholic, one is a Jew, or one is a non-baptized person. Marriage blows up. Run that thing to Rome, put it through the grinder, and the Pope gives a divorce. Divorce. Yeah.
Question, infertility isn't there, for example, if the bride has already had a hysterectomy?
No.
Or
No, erection, penetration, insemination. It's the incapacity of coitus. It's not the incapacity of conception. Now, there had been some interesting rodal cases about what happens when the hysterectomy is total, when it also takes out the cervix. And does that cause female impotence? The answer was, it came back basically roundly no.
The answer came back what?
Roundly no.
It's not a cause.
No, the loss of the cervix does not result in female impotence. Because impotence is defined from a male point of view, erection, penetration, semination, or some sort of fluid. Quickly, boy, we've been spending a lot of time on this stuff. Dispensing, oh yeah, and when somebody's dying, any old priest, even if he's a priest that's been a bad boy priest,
Right.
thrown off the job, and the bishop is standing there. Get out of the way, bishop! You can push him aside and you can do all those dispensations and marry that person. The only thing that a priest can't dispense from is the impediment of sacred orders of the presbyterate. So if a guy's a deacon, I can do it. If a guy's a priest, I can't. So I can dispense from everything and marry him to death. Hey, the church is really good on deathbeds. Sometimes, sometimes marriages get declared invalid, not null, invalid, because of some funny things up here. Faculties. In order for me to do a wedding, I have to have the capacity to do it. It's given to me either by office or by concession. If I'm a pastor, I have it by office. If I'm a bishop, I have it by office. If I'm neither of those, I have, or if I'm an associate parochial vicar, I have it by office. But if I'm a guy coming in to marry my cousin, somebody has to say, you have the faculty to marry your cousin. They don't say it, there's a problem. Used to be, in the old law, that was an invalid marriage forever. Under the new law, Canon 144 says, everybody thought that Dave got the thing from Joe. And I didn't. But everybody thinks that I did. Canon 144, valid. Not a problem. Place for weddings, we talked about. Canonical form. This is pretty interesting. Canonical form. Priest and 2 witnesses. Yeah, we know all about that. Deacon and 2 witnesses. Yeah, we know all about that. But I want to tell you the story about my friend Harry Birkenstock. He wears his Birkenstock, got funny long hair, and he just loves everything and everybody. And he's going to do the wedding of Mary and Joe. And says, okay, now, Mary and Joe now are going to exchange their vows. Now, let's listen to them exchange their vows. And he steps off to the side, and they go on for 20 minutes talking about walking the dog and taking out the garbage.
Yeah, that's what you do.
And then Harry steps back in and says, wasn't that wonderful? Invalid.
Right.
Because the priest or the deacon who adds sister who is standing by has to do 2 things with that couple getting married. He has to request the vows, and he has to receive those vows in the name of the church. And so when I'm getting in a ceremony marrying someone, I say, and so in the presence of the church, I ask you to state your intentions. Having stated your intentions, now do you. In the name, and then after they do this, I say, in the name of the church, I accept these vows. And if Harry doesn't do it, then there ain't no marriage. How about that? Don't be too creative when you marry people. And there's a new rite of marriage that I talk about that's awful. It's written by the brother-in-law, some cardinal. We talk about how to tweak marriages that are out of line. Convalidation means that there's really something about that marriage that's wrong. It's either invalid or it's null. If it's invalid because of Harry Birkenstock, since it's kind of a public thing, they got to renew their vows publicly. If it's null because she didn't want to have babies but didn't tell anybody, you can do either publicly or privately, depending on what the couple would like to do. If she's adamant, says, we're married, that's enough. You don't have to renew the vows publicly. And you get involved in this thing called a radical sanation, where, as you presume, the continuance of consent, the marriage is sanated, is fixed, radically, down to its roots, with all the dispensations that you need, with, by fiction of the law, all the benefits of marriage going back to the very time that you first said, I do. Radical sanation. If there was something else, like you get married in front of a justice of peace, then get that on record, so you have to do it publicly. There's the two ways of doing it. The cool effects of radical sanation is that the other spouse doesn't even have to know it's happening, and that takes the effects all the way back to the very, very beginning. Catholic divorce, 2 cases. A marriage is not consummated, a marriage is not sacramental. The Holy See, or the bishop, can declare those marriages severed.
What was the second one? Not consummated and not what?
Sacramental. Matrimonial nullity, substantial, that's to the very core of the thing. An impediment, something not dispensed. As a result of lack of formalities, done in front of a justice of the peace. Yeah. And remember that language, invalidity versus nullity. It's really, really important language.
Would you just define one more time invalidity versus?
Invalidity means it has no effect in the church.
Okay.
Nullity means deep down inside it stinks. So bad that it doesn't exist.
And the bishop can give the divorce?
The bishop can give the divorce when it's a Pauline privilege, and he simply declares that the person can exercise it. The privilege of the faith has to be given by the Holy See. That's between, say, a Christian and a non-Christian. Non-consummation, that's given by the bishop. So the only one that has to go to Rome there is the Pauline privilege. I keep pushing this thing the wrong way. I know, I was doing it the right way, huh? Okay. We have matrimonial nullity when this stuff goes in front of an ecclesiastical court. I got something to give you. If I can find it. Another packet was right here someplace. It was in an envelope.
Oh, you sent it over the only.
Here they are. I got white envelopes. Just pass this out. What I've put together here is something from the Canon Law Society, that it talks about how the church has really speeded up the process of getting these kinds of nullities. And it says that sometimes, if a couple sort of agrees, yeah, this wasn't a marriage, it can be done in 45 days. Oh, I'm sorry, how long? 45 days. You know, the bishop's on the stick. There's 3 things that I want to point out in this document. You can take time. First has to do with what tribunal is competent to begin the instruction of a case. It used to be, under the old law, the competent tribunal was the tribunal of the place where the marriage took place, or of the domicile of the respondent, not the person who's putting it in, not the petitioner, not the plaintiff, but the respondent. And then if it was the domicile of the plaintiff, you had to go through some letter writing and permission granting. And if the person lived like in Mexico and not in the United States conference, it was a mess. Now, the new law says the competent tribunal is where the marriage took place, where either of the parties lives, or the tribunal that's capable of putting together most of the proofs.
But
Most
you
of the
have
what?
what?
The proofs.
Thank you.
The witnesses.
The proofs, the witnesses, even though they're living in Canada, doesn't matter, yeah, I can get them. But the thing now is usually somebody from Denver, got married in Denver, now lives in Jersey City. Very easy. You don't have to, oh yeah, you're in Jersey City, fine, here. The second thing that's very good now is if both parties agree to do it. The bishop's going to handle the case, and all he needs is an assessor and somebody to help them out looking at that stuff. Very, very quick. The third important thing is I work very hard, I get this thing through, and I get a decree of nullity for this couple. The defender of the bond has to appeal it pro forma to the next higher court, to Newark in that case, to the Metropolitan. Automatic appeals have been done away with. No appeals automatically. And without the appeal, in a certain number of days, it becomes done. A done deal. Used to be had to go through 2 of these things, added another year. No time. Final shot across the bow. We finished?
Oh, yeah, well,
Good. Okay. Final thing across the bow. I'm giving you something else that you might appreciate. You guys, none of you is divorced and remarried. You're divorced and remarried. Okay. The issue of going to communion.
oh, did you want me not to record?
That'd be a good idea.
Oh,